Okay, so you're probably here because, well, let's face it, most of us are looking for a little more joy in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And you want more than just some, like, vague advice. You want something you can actually use,
Mm.
something actionable.
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into an article from Tickled Think. It's called 10 Small Things to Do to Find Joy in Life Again.
Mm.
And it really caught my eye because the author goes beyond just the usual, like, happiness tips. They actually talk about the things that didn't work for them.
Oh, that's interesting. It's one thing to, preach a list of tips,
Yeah,
but sharing the struggle, that's what makes it real.
totally.
That's what makes the advice actually resonate, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. So we're not just going to run through the list. We're going to unpack why these things might work, the psychology behind them,
Okay.
and really pull out the most useful parts for you, the listener.
Sounds good.
So first up, learn to focus on what you can control.
Hmm.
Sounds simple enough, right?
Yeah.
But the article talks about how the author was, at first, trying to, like, micromanage every single aspect of their life,
Oh, yeah, I see that.
like every detail.
Yeah. It's a classic trap, and it ties into this idea that psychologists call locus of control.
Okay.
It's basically where you think or where you believe the power lies in your life.
Right.
So, like, someone with a strong internal locus of control, they think they're the ones steering the ship, right?
Gotcha.
But someone with more of an external locus, they feel like they're just being tossed around by the waves.
Okay. So the author, with their, like, super detailed plans, they were all about that internal locus.
Right. Total control.
Yeah. But it sounds like maybe it backfired.
Well, yeah, it kind of did. And it makes sense when you think about it. Trying to control every little detail, it just sets you up for constant disappointment.
Right.
Because, well, life happens.
Yeah.
The article even talks about how unexpected events just threw the author completely off track, and it led to more stress, not less.
Ugh. I bet a lot of us can relate to that feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I know I've wasted so much time making plans that just completely crumble the second something unexpected happens.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, for sure. Especially, I think for me, it's deadlines.
Okay. Right.
It's a constant dance between planning and accepting that, some things are just beyond my control.
Right.
I think the key is recognizing when that struggle for control becomes counterproductive.
That's a really good point. It's not about, like, giving up on planning altogether.
No.
It's more about recognizing what you can actually influence and what you can't.
Right. Exactly.
And, that leads perfectly into the next tip. Take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
The author was so focused on the future that they just completely lost sight of the present.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've been guilty of that too sometimes.
Oh, yeah. The curse of, future tripping.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's where mindfulness comes in. And it's not about emptying your mind or becoming some sort of Zen master or anything like that.
Right.
It's really about bringing your attention to this very moment, like right now.
Yeah. Okay. But how do you actually do that? Is it really as simple as just taking a few deep breaths when you feel overwhelmed?
I mean, it can be. Like conscious breathing, it's a fantastic tool. It can really interrupt that runaway train of thought.
Okay.
But it's also about engaging your senses. Like what do you see right now? What do you hear? It's about grounding yourself in the present,
Yeah.
not getting swept away by worries or what ifs.
That's so interesting because the article talks about how the author was initially, like, all about setting these huge goals.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And trying to make these massive changes all at once.
Yeah.
That sounds exhausting.
It can be. It really can. Our culture often pushes this like go big or go home mentality.
Yeah.
But what the author actually found was that by slowing down and really focusing on the present, they actually made more sustainable progress.
Wow.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step,
Totally. And speaking of journeys, this next point really struck a chord with me. Focus on things that make you genuinely happy. The author was chasing achievements, thinking that success would equal happiness. But guess what?
Why?
It didn't.
Right. There's a huge difference between like fleeting pleasure or achievement and deeper, more lasting happiness.
So what's the difference? Is it about, like, what we choose to prioritize in our lives?
Possibly.
The article asks, what really makes you happy?
Yes.
And is that actually aligned with what you're currently focused on?
Wow.
That's a question worth thinking about, isn't it?
Yeah, No, absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in, societal expectations or external markers of success. But
Mhm.
but true happiness, I think it often comes from those deeper, those more intrinsic things,
Okay.
like genuine connections, meaningful work, pursuing our passions. Sometimes, the pursuit of more, it can actually lead us further away from what really matters.
Hmm. That's powerful.
It's about taking a step back and really reevaluating our priorities, making sure they actually line up with our values and, with what truly brings us joy.
That is such a good reminder.
Mm.
And speaking of reevaluating, this next point is something I think we all struggle with sometimes. Practice self-compassion.
Ah,
I mean,
yeah.
we can be our own worst critics, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The author talks about being incredibly hard on themselves to the point where it actually eroded their confidence.
Yeah. Self-criticism, it can be a really powerful motivator,
Right.
but when it becomes too much, when it's excessive, it can be incredibly destructive.
Oh, for sure.
That's where self-compassion comes in.
Okay.
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a friend who is struggling.
Yeah.
Like, imagine a friend came to you with the same problem.
Mm.
You wouldn't be so harsh, right?
That's such a good way to put it. It's so easy to get caught up in that, spiral of negative self-talk.
It really is.
But if we actually said those things to a friend, we'd be horrified.
Exactly. And research has shown that, self-compassion, it's linked to greater resilience.
Mm.
When we can be kind to ourselves, even when we face setbacks, we're more likely to bounce back and keep moving forward.
Right.
Instead of just berating ourselves for mistakes, it's about acknowledging that we're human. We all make mistakes. We're learning, and we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Mm. Okay, so let's move on to point number 5. Set small and achievable goals. Now, this one seems kind of counterintuitive, especially in a world that's constantly telling us to dream big and go for it.
Right. Reach for the stars. But the author found that slowing down and setting smaller goals actually led to greater success in the long run.
Really?
Yeah, it's about building momentum step by step, not trying to conquer the world all at once.
That makes sense.
It's like training for a marathon. You wouldn't just jump out the door and try to run 26 miles on day one, right?
Yeah, way.
You'd start with shorter distances,
Yeah.
gradually increase your mileage over time, and it's the same principle for personal growth.
That's such a good analogy.
Mm.
And the author actually talks about burning out from trying to do too much too soon.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that sustainable change, it happens gradually. It's not an overnight thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this next one is something I think a lot of us struggle with. Embrace vulnerability. The article mentions how, at first, the author saw vulnerability as a weakness,
Oh, yeah.
something to avoid at all costs.
It's such a common misconception,
Yeah.
especially, in a culture that equates vulnerability with weakness.
Hmm.
We're taught to put on a brave face, hide our struggles, project this image of strength and resilience.
Right.
But the truth is, vulnerability is essential for genuine connection and for empathy and for growth.
So it's about, letting our guard down, letting people see our imperfections.
Exactly.
Man, that could be terrifying.
It can.
What if people judge us? Or think less of us?
I know that fear of judgment is incredibly common, but think about it this way, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we actually give other people permission to do the same.
Hmm.
We create space for authenticity and connection. And the article even talks about, the sense of relief that the author felt when they finally opened up to someone they trusted.
Wow.
Like this weight had been lifted.
That's powerful. It makes me think about those times when I've been struggling and I felt like I had to put on this brave face.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe letting people in a little bit wouldn't be so bad after all. Okay, on to point 7. Make self-care a priority. This one's so easy to neglect,
It is.
especially when we're busy or stressed. And the author admits to falling into that trap too.
Yeah. It's a classic trap, isn't it?
Ugh, it is.
We often put our own needs on the back burner while we're taking care of everything and everyone else.
It's so true.
But here's the thing. Self-care isn't selfish. It's essential.
Yeah.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask on a plane before helping others.
Right.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
That is so true. And the article emphasizes that self-care doesn't have to be these elaborate, spa days or weekend retreats or anything like that.
Right.
It's about incorporating small acts of self-kindness into our daily routines.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as taking 5 minutes to stretch or listening to your favorite music or just savoring a cup of tea
Hmm.
without distractions. It's about those little moments that nourish and replenish us.
And sometimes those little moments are all we need,
For totally.
just to reset and recharge. Okay, let's talk about point 8. Focus on small pleasures.
Hmm.
The author talks about how gratitude journaling helped them shift their focus to the positive, even when things were tough.
Oh, interesting.
It seems so simple. But I wonder, is there actual science behind this?
There is. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude can have a significant impact on our well-being.
Wow.
And it's not just about feeling good. Like, it actually rewires our brains to notice and appreciate the good things in our lives.
Mhm.
You know, it shifts our perspective. It helps us to see the world through a more optimistic lens.
So it's not just about positive thinking. It's about training our brains to focus on the positive.
Right.
That's fascinating. And the article makes a great point. Joy isn't always about these huge life-altering events. It's often found in those simple everyday moments.
Yeah.
Like that first sip of coffee in the morning or a beautiful sunset.
Absolutely. And those small pleasures are all around us if we just take the time to notice them.
Yeah.
You know, it's about cultivating that sense of appreciation for the little things.
And speaking of cultivating things, the next point is make kindness your superpower. I know that sounds a little cheesy. But the author talks about how acts of kindness, both giving and receiving, help them through a really tough time.
You know, kindness is often underestimated,
Yeah.
but it's a powerful force. It has this ripple effect, you know, not just on the person receiving the kindness, but on the giver as well.
Right.
When we do something kind for someone else, our brains release endorphins, those feel-good chemicals,
Hmm.
you know? They have mood-boosting effects.
So it's not just about being altruistic. It actually benefits us too.
Exactly. It's a win-win. And like we talked about before, it doesn't have to be some grand gesture. It can be something as simple as, like, you know, holding the door for someone, offering a genuine compliment,
Right.
or just listening attentively to a friend who needs to vent.
Yeah.
Those small acts of kindness, they can have a profound impact on someone's day, even their life, you know? You never know when a simple gesture of kindness might be the bright spot in someone's otherwise really difficult day.
Okay. Last but not least, let's talk about cultivate hope. The author was really struggling with feelings of hopelessness, and they found that it took, conscious effort to regain that sense of hope. It wasn't just going to magically appear.
You know, we often think of hope as this passive emotion, like something that either exists or doesn't.
Right.
But it's actually a skill.
Really?
Yeah, it can be cultivated and strengthened.
So how do we actually cultivate hope? Is it about, positive self-talk, setting goals, surrounding ourselves with supportive people?
I mean, it can be all of those things. It's about actively choosing to focus on possibilities,
Okay.
even when things feel really difficult. The article mentions mindfulness and asking for help, you know, as two key strategies that really help the author regain hope.
That's so important.
Yeah.
But we don't have to go through tough times alone.
Right.
Reaching out for support, whether it's from friends, family, a therapist, or even a supportive online community,
Yeah,
it can make all the difference.
absolutely. It's about recognizing that we don't have to have all the answers, and that asking for help, you know, is a sign of strength, not weakness. And it's about believing that things can get better,
Right.
even when it feels like they won't. Hope is that spark that keeps us going.
Even in the darkest of times.
It's amazing how, these seemingly small changes in how we think
Yeah,
can have such a huge impact on how we feel overall.
it's true.
I know I'm already feeling inspired to
Mhm.
try some of these tips out in my own life.
Me too. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
These actionable insights, they're not just theoretical concepts, they're tools we can actually use
Right.
to actively shape our experience.
Totally. So, okay, we covered a lot today, from the power of self-compassion to the importance of vulnerability and cultivating hope.
Right.
But it all comes back to that first idea, you
Yeah.
know? Focusing on what we can control.
Totally.
Our mindset, our actions, our responses to what's happening around us.
And remembering that finding joy, it's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good point.
There will be ups and downs, moments of lightness and moments of darkness.
Right. But by incorporating these practices into our lives, we can kind of equip ourselves with the tools to navigate those challenges
Right.
and cultivate a deeper sense of joy and fulfillment
It's not about like forcing happiness or pretending everything's perfect all the time, right?
No, no.
It's more about building up those inner resources, the things that help us weather the storms and appreciate the good times.
Exactly. It's about building resilience,
Mm-hmm.
embracing our imperfections, and approaching life with a sense of curiosity and openness.
The author's focus on gratitude journaling really got me thinking
Oh, yeah. About what?
about this bigger idea of ritual.
Hmm.
Like, what if, beyond just journaling, we looked at how creating little positive rituals in our lives
Okay.
can help shift our mindset and just create more space for joy?
That's an intriguing idea. Rituals, they can be incredibly powerful. They give us structure, intention, and even a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a morning meditation or a weekly nature walk or a nightly gratitude ritual, those small acts of intention can really have a big impact.
So maybe instead of getting hung up on one specific practice,
Yeah.
it's more about finding those rituals that resonate with us personally,
Mm-hmm.
incorporating them into our lives.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as taking 5 minutes each morning to just enjoy a cup of tea in silence,
Right.
or listening to your favorite music on your commute.
Absolutely. It's about finding those little pockets of joy and intentionally weaving them into our days.
Yeah.
And those rituals can change as we change. What brings us joy today might be different from what brought us joy a year ago.
Right.
And that's okay. It's about paying attention to what we need and finding the things that nourish and support us along the way.
That is the perfect note to end on. It's been such a fascinating deep dive into this whole idea of finding joy.
It has been.
And I really hope you've walked away with some valuable insights and inspiration today.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting,
Yes.
and keep seeking those moments of joy in the everyday.
Love it.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
So I don't know about you, but I feel like we've uncovered some real gems today.
Yeah, definitely.
Like these are things we can actually take and use right now to feel a little bit better.
Totally.
And isn't that what we all want? A little more joy in our lives.
Absolutely. And it's not about becoming some perfectly happy robot.
Right.
It's about learning how to ride the waves,
Yeah.
the ups and the downs, and finding those moments of peace and joy along the way.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one big takeaway that you hope our listeners will remember?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's about recognizing that we have more power than we think.
Okay.
We can't always control what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond.
That's such a good reminder. It's not about being unrealistically positive all the time. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even when things are tough.
Exactly.
Mm.
And being kind to ourselves along the way. We all deserve a little grace.
So true. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those conversations going. Talk to your friends, your family, your therapist, whoever you feel comfortable with. Share what you've learned, ask questions, and keep exploring those things that bring you joy.
And remember, every day is a new opportunity to create a life you love.
Until next time.